So I'm going to talk about 5 points, 5 areas or 5 signs that you should be looking out for the week before your driving test. So before I start talking about the 5 signs, I want you to realise that if you know these are happening, then you can correct them by making sure you're doing correctly. All right. So before you get, I feel like I'm going to fail my test because you told me this, you can correct these things. You know, they're easy to correct. All you got to do is practice them, understand why you're doing it wrong, and speak to your instructor or your family member. So the first one is being prompted. All right. And what I mean by being prompted, when you first start out on lessons, your instructor's giving you full instructions, and eventually you get to the point where they're going to give you less instructions and they might give you little prompts like, should be doing this, should be doing that, or check your right shoulder, things like that. As you get closer to your driving test, that should not be happening. It should be, drive off when you're ready, okay, into gear, have a look round, it's safe, I'm off. That's how it should be. Right? If you're not checking your shoulder, or you're pulling off in the wrong gear, or you're stalling when you pull off, then you've got to be saying to yourself, what's going wrong there? And what am I doing wrong? Ask your instructor what you're doing wrong, because it should be smooth, it should be safe to pull off. That's just one example. Another example would be, you're driving along the road and there's parked cars ahead of you and the car's coming towards you. If your instructor or your family member is saying to you, you need to be slowing down, you're going too fast, you need to be giving way, then they're prompting you, aren't they? They're telling you what to do. You should be doing this, and hopefully you are doing it. And if you are doing it, fantastic. So if you're driving to the point where your instructor or your family member's not telling you what to do, and you're doing it all, right, 99% of it you're doing it pretty well without any prompting, then you're fine, aren't you? But if you're getting told you need to slow down, or you need to be changing up to a gear, or you need to be slowing down to a gear for that turn, then you're doing things at a standard that's not good enough at that point. Okay, so you need to improve. Another area of a sign that you're not ready for your driving test would be you come into a busy roundabout, and the thought of going to a busy roundabout gives you the jitters to the point where you're going to stall, or you freeze at the roundabout and you're thinking, I'm not sure where I can go, I can't work out where I can go, and your instructor's saying to you, you can go there, why aren't you going? You know, you've probably seen the gap, but you're too frightened to go. So you've got to say to yourself, I need to have more practice on the big roundabouts. Because if I'm sat there on my driving test and I don't go, the examiner's going to have a look across and wait for you to go for the next gap. And if you don't go the next gap, they're going to give you a fault for hesitation. And if you don't go, eventually they're going to say to you, it's a gap there now, are you going to get going? And they're going to give you a serious at that point for hesitation, aren't they? So if you're to the point where you've got a couple of days for your driving test, a week for your driving test, and you're actually scared of going through a busy roundabout, or you're waiting when you know it's definitely clear, then you really don't say to yourself, should I be taking my driving test at that point? Because the examiner's not going to give me a little bit of an easy pass. You know, they're not going to say, oh yeah, I'll let you off this time. They're going to fail you for hesitation, aren't they? Because you're holding traffic up behind you. So if you're coming to a busy area, whether it be a roundabout or a busy junction, and you can't work out when's a safe time to go without someone telling you, then you're not ready. You've got to work on that more. Okay? Another area, and like I say, all these areas that I talk about, they can be improved and they can be sorted. And this one we're talking about now is manoeuvres. And in the UK, there's 4 manoeuvres that you need to do for the driving test. And like I say, wherever you are in different times of the world, I'm sure there's a manoeuvre for your driving test that you need to complete. So in the UK, it's reverse into a parking space, drive into a parking space, park on the right, and parallel park. They're the 4 manoeuvres, and 1 in 4 will get the emergency stop as well. So you need to be able to do them manoeuvres to a reasonable standard, and to the point where you can complete the manoeuvre with good observations, doing things safely. So what you've got to say to yourself is, if you've done, say, reverse bay parking 5 times on the trot, you should be able to get 4 of them reasonably well into the bay, and the 5th one you should be able to correct it with a shunt going forwards and backwards. All right? So that's what you should be saying to yourself. If you're doing five of them manoeuvres and they're going completely wrong, they're not even going in the bay, you don't know what to do, then you know you can't do a manoeuvre. You've got to work on it more. Simple as that. There's no ifs or buts. You've got to work on it. Manoeuvres don't just get given to you. Practice, that's all it is. Practice makes perfect. It's like anything. The more you practice it, the better you're going to get. So if it's going wrong, you need to work on it. And if it's a manoeuvre that you don't know, then you've got to get working on that pretty quickly, haven't you? Especially if you've got a week before your test. So if you're coming up to your driving test and your 4 manoeuvres are okay, but 50-50, then you know that when you get your driving test, it's a 50-50 whether you're going to pass at a point. Because whatever manoeuvre you're going to get, it's a pot luck for you for 50-50. You should be taking your driving test and saying, my manoeuvres are pretty good. 9 out of 10, I'm going to get it done. I'm going to be able to handle the cars coming towards me. I'm going to be able to complete that manoeuvre. And that's what you should be saying to yourself. If you're not saying that, then you should be saying to yourself, more practice. Okay? The 4th one then is independent driving. And when you first start doing independent driving in the UK for the driving test practice, it's going to be either sat-nav or road signs. And sometimes the instructors will start you off on road signs, it's a bit easier. Sometimes they'll do sat-nav. It all depends on the area, I suppose. But what you should be saying to yourself is you should be able to do any of them too pretty good safely. 20 minutes, so it's half of the driving test it is. So if you're driving along following a sat-nav, and you should be able to understand what the sat-nav's telling you, look at the right points, not get distracted by it, and understand what's happening ahead of you at the same time on the road. Because if you're staring too much at the sat-nav and paying too much attention to that, you might miss something ahead of you, which could be dangerous. Or if you go the wrong way, you suddenly start panicking. Right? It's not the end of the world as long as you keep yourself safe. But if you do silly things afterwards, like panic about the fact that, oh God, I've done the wrong way here, they're going to think I'm bad, you're probably going to do something silly, and you're probably going to fail your test for it at the same time, doing something silly on it. And the same would appeal for the road signs. If you're missing signs, and what I mean by that, 20 minutes of independent driving on a road sign, and out of them say you've got 10 signs to follow, and you miss half of them, then you need to practice signs a lot more then, don't you? Because you should be spotting the signs early enough to deal with the situation ahead of you. And if you're missing the signs, I missed the sign, what am I going to do? Keep yourself safe. Do the safe thing at that point, which will be either going ahead at a roundabout or going left, but make sure you tell everyone what your intentions are, make sure you stick to your lanes. But if you're not doing any of that, and you're drifting on roundabouts or going round things faster because you're getting distracted by the fact that you've missed the sign, then you're probably going to pick up a fault or maybe a serious on the test as well. Okay? So work on the independent driving section more because it is quite important. If you're rolling back on a hill, or you're stalling on a hill, or you're not checking round on a hill, you're not doing things safely, then it's practice. That's what you need to have more, practice. Because these are the things that are going to crop up on your test. You're going to get at least 1 hill start, maybe more, depending on where you live, depending on what roundabouts or junctions if they're on hills. But you're definitely going to get 1, right? So if you're going to roll backwards on a hill, it's going to be a fault. If you roll backwards as a car behind you, it's probably going to be serious. If someone's walking behind the car, crossing the road behind you, and you roll back a bit, don't be surprised if they're going to put the foot on the brake. So make sure when you practice your hill starts, you're not rolling backwards. If you are, practice them more. Make sure when you release that handbrake, it just pulls forward nicely. Okay? So practice them hill starts to the point where they're good and you're confident with them. All right? If you're not confident with hill starts, you're going to test, you're thinking, I hope I don't get an hill start, I hope it's not busy, because if it is, I'm going to panic. Then you shouldn't be taking your test at that point. Okay? So all these points I've mentioned, all these 5 points, but if you can't improve them points and you're going for that test thinking, I can't be doing that, I'm not going to do it right, then you know you're going to fail. Okay? Well, good luck on the test, and I hope you improve these points we talked about.